face on the screen. So he grabbed the first person he could find, and that person turned out to be a teenager called Bill Tainton.
Stay here and look straight ahead, okay?
I was a bit scared of doing it, but he assured me that everything was all right and nothing to worry about. And then he disappeared to go down to the receiving end to see if he can see a picture or something or other. And I got into focus and couldn't stop there much more than a minute because of the terrific heat from these lamps. And I pulled away.
You've moved a wee bit, you're out of focus. You've got to keep very, very still.
With that, he put his hand in his pocket and pressed £0.50 in my hand.
So that was the first television fee, £0.50?
That, you can say, was the first television fee in the world.
He should have got a better agent.
So I was pleased with £0.50. Actually, I did all what Mr. Baird asked me to do. When he got back to the receiver, he shouted out,
"Can you just stick your tongue out for me, please?"
Couldn't make out what he's really up to. So I poked my tongue out, and I thought it was rude at the time, mind you.
Nice work. I can see him.
This is a photograph of what he would have seen, the first ever television transmission of a human face.
Well, he was still excited when he spoke to me, and he said, "What do you think of it, William?" So I came out point blank and said, "I don't think much of it."
Whatever Baird's living dummy might have thought of the weird Scots mesmerising apparatus, the man himself was ecstatic.
I can see you! Television at last!
Keen to show off his amazing invention as quickly as possible, Baird invited selected members of the Royal Institution round to his flat. And so on January the 26th, 1926, the great and the good, dressed in full evening dress, trudged up this dingy staircase to see what all the fuss was about.
Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for coming along to my demonstration of television.
Baird was worried. Not that they wouldn't be impressed, but that the lenses on the Nitkoff disc might shake loose again, massacring his guests. All that happened, though, was that one man got his beard caught. The audience managed to see the face of a person. Although faint and blurred, it was transmitted from one room to the other. Some thought this was trickery. During his demonstration, Baird caught one suspicious man crawling under the apparatus to find out how it was done.
Excuse me, sir, have you lost something down here?
Television had arrived.
Baird was on a high. Instead of closeting himself away at lunchtime with a scone and a cup of Presbyterian tea, he was to be found charging around Soho, gorging himself on peach and peacock. This to him would have been an hors d'oeuvre, an amuse-bouche. There were fine wines washed down with lashings of hot brandy. He was, without realising it, the original media lovey. Ironically, his favourite restaurant was the Ivy, which today is the favourite haunt of all the stars that his invention created.
But over in the United States, the young pretender was closing in. While Baird gorged his way through London's West End, an altogether more sober Farnsworth had settled down in San Francisco. The Utah farm boy, now aged 20, had set up a laboratory and was once more working obsessively on his television system. Though he had married, he remained faithful to his electronic mistress and confessed to his wife, "I think you should know there's another woman in my life, and her name is television." But his intellectual infidelity paid off. In less than a year, Farnsworth had a device that actually displayed an image. All of a sudden, Baird's mechanical system had an electronic rival.
Farnsworth got his first picture on this cathode ray tube. It was a simple image of a straight line that appeared in a field no bigger than a postage stamp on the face of this cathode ray tube on September 7th, 1927, and that was the breakthrough that he had been waiting for.
Back in Britain, Baird was under pressure. He was forced to combine gluttony with designing, using tablecloths in the restaurants he visited to work on improvements. He must have looked like a paranoid fool as he scuttled around with a sheaf of tablecloths under his arm. John Logie Baird, however, was keen to convince the Americans that he wasn't out of the picture. And so, just 2 years after his first clumsy demonstration of television, he scored another first. He broadcast live pictures of a woman in London across 3,000 miles of ocean to a television set in New York. In February 1928, Baird still ruled the TV roost, but his reign was short-lived. A few months later, Farnsworth launched his cathode ray tube system in San Francisco, and the press went wild. It was anyone's race, but neither of them won. Big business saw just how enormous television might be. In America, the giant RCA Corporation developed their very own, completely original electronic system, leaving Farnsworth out in the cold. And in the UK, Marconi EMI were developing a similar electronic system, leaving Baird out of the equation. However, here, Baird had an indulgent auntie. Baird persuaded the BBC to let him use their radio transmitters for his experimental broadcasts. His television then was no longer theory, he was actually transmitting.
It is now 12 years ago since I produced the first little flickering television image. Today we have in London a regular television service twice daily with thousands of lookers in.
Baird became the first in the world to broadcast live television pictures, and he marketed his Baird television like a true businessman.
This is the only surviving example of the world's first mass-produced television set. It was made in 1927. It's a Baird Model B televisor. They were very, very expensive, about the same price as buying a brand new Rolls-Royce car. In fact, they were so expensive that the Baird company rapidly had to rethink and bring out a much cheaper model. It's almost like a pair of video headphones. You actually watch it like this.
Early broadcasts were, quite frankly, rubbish, because the sound and the picture weren't in sync. So what you actually got was something like this. I would talk to you for 2 minutes, and then the screen would go black, and then you'd hear what I'd just said. Didn't matter, though. People were amazed.
Ah, so you've missed your train?
Yes. I got to the station and there it was, just pulling out.
The first play ever broadcast was The Man with a Flower in His Mouth. There were 3 characters. All you could see was their head and shoulders, and then they would slide in and out of a fixed studio chair when the checkered board came across. And you had to look really, really hard to see the picture.
A dozen, more or less. I'd have caught it.
The early 30-line television pictures from about 1929 onwards were very small, only about half the size of a postcard. They were dim, and because you were using a neon lamp, they weren't black and white, they were orange and black.
Like most people, Ray Herbert, who was 12 at the time, couldn't afford to buy a Baird televisor. So he bought a kit of parts and built one for himself and his parents.
And you had to crouch down as the person operating the system so that you could just see the bottom bit of the picture, making the adjustments as necessary, enabling your parents to look over your shoulder and see the picture itself. Well, it was a great occasion when I got my first picture in November. And I summoned my father in, who thought I should be in bed at 11 o'clock instead of fiddling about with television equipment. And I said to him,
there you are, that's television. And he said, oh, you sure? You sure it's not a pattern of the wallpaper? And I said, no, it's a